everyone, and welcome to the Volunteering in Nature Summer Series. My name is Sasha Wells. I'm the statewide EstuaryWatch and Waterwatch facilitator, and my job today is facilitating this presentation. So before we begin, I would like to acknowledge all the traditional owners across Victoria as we come together far and wide. For me, I am presenting on the lands of the Wadawurrung people, and I wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners of the land on which we meet with you today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and those that may be with us today. Welcome. EstuaryWatch and Waterwatch Victoria is very excited to be working in partnership with Parks Victoria to support their Volunteering in Nature Summer Series this week. There's a whole range of activities online and in the park. It's a great way to recognise International Volunteer Day, which is on this Saturday. So hopefully you signed up to obviously this event, but some other events as well out in the field and online. We've also got a Waterwatch presenter on Friday, talking all things frogs with James Fraser from Melbourne Water. So if you haven't already signed up for that one, get on board. EstuaryWatch and Waterwatch Victoria, in partnership with Corangamite CMA, are pleased to be part of the Volunteering in Nature Summer Series. I'm going to introduce our presenter today, Deirdre Murphy. Deirdre Murphy is the Regional Citizen Science Project Officer at Corangamite CMA. Deirdre has 16 years experience with citizen science water quality monitoring programs, including Waterwatch and EstuaryWatch. These programs train environmental volunteers in data collection, contributing to natural resource management, community education and raising awareness of waterway and catchment issues. Deirdre will be presenting on citizen science programs across the catchment to coast in the Corangamite CMA region. I'd like to thank Deirdre and officially welcome her into the presentation.
Thank you very much, Sasha. Yes, I'm really pleased to be here. Welcome along to my presentation, Catchment to Coasts, Citizen Science. Now I'm just going to share my screen. Yes, I hope you see that. Sasha, is that looking good?
Looks good. Excellent. Before we get stuck into the presentation, just wanted to quickly go through how the webinar will work. So for those who are online, if you have any questions, then there's a Q&A section on the right-hand side of the screen, hopefully on your right-hand side, otherwise look around for a little Q&A box. I'll collate the questions and ask Deirdre of those at the end of the presentation. So keep them coming through, but we'll address them right at the end. If you have any IT issues, this is important. We've got some support on the line. It's 0428 244 476. So if you need any tech support during the presentation, just call out. We are recording this presentation and it will be uploaded to the Parks Victoria website after the presentation. So thank you once again for joining us, and I'll hand over to Deirdre.
Thank you very much, Sasha. Well, welcome along to my presentation. First of all, I'd like to make an acknowledgement of country. The Corangamite CMA, Catchment Management Authority, acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land and waters where we work and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. I will be speaking today about citizen science activities happening on the lands of the Wadawurrung and the Eastern Maar traditional owners. Well, today's session, we'll be talking about three main things. First of all, we're celebrating International Volunteering Day. That's on Saturday the 5th of December, and acknowledging the contribution of time, effort and expertise in Corangamite CMA programs across Victoria. And secondly, we're going to be sharing information on current citizen science programs on land managed by Parks Victoria and the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning, also known as DELP. This includes the EstuaryWatch and Waterwatch long-term water quality monitoring programs, the River Detectives Freshwater Education Program, and a wide variety of short-term citizen science activities. And my third point today will be to demonstrate how this has been implemented by an environmental volunteering group, Friends of Brisbane Rangers, as a case study. So you might be asking, what is citizen science? Well, it's a community participation and collaboration in scientific research with the aim of increasing scientific knowledge. And this might be done by groups or individuals taking part in a project as a participant, as simple as that, or in collaboration with researchers. Networks can be established between agencies and these community participants. The data is collected through observations and measurements, such as your mobile phone, and collecting information on the presence of threatened or iconic species such as frogs or platypus. Citizen science can also involve data collection that involves new skill development and the use of specialised equipment. And citizen science activities are as diverse and as accessible as you can imagine. These photos were taken pre-COVID, so there's no physical distancing here, so just excuse that, won't you? As I mentioned, some citizen science activities are really easy to access, and as you'll find out, you can just almost be a casual observer in nature. For one example, there's an app called Nature Blitz, and it's been developed by North Central CMA, and it collects images, audio and location of species and provides information on the biodiversity in that region. For example, the extent of populations of growing grass frog. Another really simple activity that can be easily done is using a fluker post. Now, for people that don't know about flukers, they're physical wooden posts that act as a photo point, and they're installed at strategic locations in the environment. People walking past use the Fluker Post app on their own phone to take a photo of the given scene. And this is a simple system of repeat photography, providing valuable long-term natural resource management information. And there's some programs here that will have you diving in much more deeply, and this will result in you learning much more about your natural environment. One of these would be the National Waterbug Blitz, surveys that look at waterbug populations, which are an important part of food webs, to provide an assessment of waterway health. As you can imagine, water bugs depend on good habitat for them to eat, and then fish, platypus and water rats depend on the water bugs for their diet. Another example I'll give you before we move on is water quality project-based citizen science programs. And these monitor changes in water quality, and they can help to track progress of river health projects at CMAs, such as fencing and revegetation activities that improve riverside habitat. So what I'm trying to say is citizen science activities are diverse and they're really done for a purpose. Okay, well, here we are. We're at the Catchment Management Authority and this is where I work. Why do I do what I do? Well, personally, I care about the environment and I want to share my knowledge about citizen science. And where do we do it? Well, as you can see, we're in Southwest Victoria, and our area of activity ranges from Ballarat down to the Bellarine, and from Lara right across to the 12 Apostles down at Peterborough. Citizen science programs are an important part of the CMA's activities and help to build awareness and knowledge. It empowers the community and stakeholders and increases interest of and ownership in the protection of natural resources. The goal of our citizen science program is to establish a connection between community members and waterway and catchment management through community participation in engagement events and monitoring activities. Let's talk about the volunteers. How many volunteers are there in the state of Victoria in environmental volunteering? Well, certainly in the waterway sector, there's 6,922 volunteers across 1,019 sites. And what about in the Corangamite CMA? Well, I've got some statistics there. There's 123 active volunteers at 197 sites, and they're involved in the Waterwatch and EstuaryWatch programs. And why do citizen science participants volunteer? Well, in a survey of EstuaryWatch and Waterwatch monitors in 2019, we learned that people participated because of their interest in waterway and estuary health. Also, their interest in providing good quality data. They have a care of a specific location, something that means a lot to them, and they love being involved in the community. Into the future, most citizen scientists are interested in partnering with traditional owners to understand the cultural value of water. Some of you might be interested in doing some monitoring related to specific birds, frogs, fish, and other native water animals. Now let's talk about citizen science programs. First of all, Waterwatch. Yes, it's the logo on my shirt. Waterwatch is a long-term water quality monitoring program operating in Victoria since 1993 and monitoring water sources like rivers, lakes and wetlands all throughout the catchment. The monitoring undertaken by the Waterwatch programs follows standardised methodologies set out in field manuals, and these ensure that the program produces really credible data of known quality. Now, the monthly tests that might be undertaken in our region include things like dissolved oxygen, because everything depends on oxygen to live, temperature, good habitat must have a stable temperature, pH, which is the acidity of the water. It's got to be very neutral for most creatures, and electrical conductivity, which is a measure of salinity, how much salt is in the water. We measure turbidity, which is the cloudiness of the water, and reactive phosphorus, which is a nutrient that can be transported in our waterways. Nutrients like that can cause algal blooms if there's too much of it. Water quality parameters that can reflect seasonal flow changes and impacts from upstream rural inputs. And if you think of what's happening upstream in your catchment, you might have perfectly natural forests, or you might have agricultural systems, grazing properties, groundwater inputs, and of course there's urban inputs too, such as stormwater or pollutants. The Waterwatch program also do habitat surveys, and they're used to evaluate the condition of the bank and the verge of the waterway. So the bank is the steep side of the waterway, and the verge is where the land is a bit more even gradient. We look at the in-stream vegetation, because these are the water plants that our aquatic creatures depend upon. We look at bank stability, which is like erosion, and how that might impact the waterway, and also the complexity of the channel. That is, the presence of pools and riffles where the water is more turbulent. Waterwatch participants do waterbug surveys. Now, waterbugs, also known as aquatic macroinvertebrates, aquatic because they live in the water, macro because you can see them with your naked eye, and invertebrates meaning they don't have an internal skeleton, measure the diversity and the abundance of these creatures, and that's used to assess waterway condition. As you can imagine, more creatures, more biodiversity. We'll talk more about this later. And finally, water watchers do photo point monitoring, where photographs are taken from a fixed photo point and are used to observe and document environmental change on a waterway over time. Now, here's an example. What's this place? This is Lake Booker near Camperdown. Now, what's happening here is photo point monitoring, and it's there to determine the change in water levels over seasons. And I wanted to show you this image to link the importance of data collection for a purpose. For instance, in this case, monitors are making observations of not only the water levels, but what birds are present there, because this is a Ramsar site. Ramsar sites are formally recognised wetlands that have habitat protection status to benefit migratory wader birds. So if we've got an idea of what's happening in that lake, we'll know whether the birds are visiting. The data that's collected is loaded to the Waterwatch Victoria data portal and can be viewed spatially on a map across the state. Clicking on a site will take you to the site overview where the water quality data is summarised. Information from the portal, including graphs and statistics, can be downloaded. So there's three important outputs from the Waterwatch program: monitoring, education and engagement. Through the Waterwatch program, citizen scientists are supported and encouraged to become actively involved in local waterway monitoring and on-ground activities. Waterwatch volunteers collect valuable data from waterways. In many instances, this is the only data collected at these particular sites. Like, these are real gaps in information. Schools are also engaged with hands-on learning through the freshwater education program River Detectives. And for more than 26 years, the Waterwatch program has been connecting face-to-face with local communities to raise awareness of waterway health and sustainable water management issues. Let's talk about the EstuaryWatch program. It's another long-term water quality monitoring program that's been operating in Victoria since 2006. And it monitors estuary health. Now, estuaries are where the river meets the sea and are important for social and environmental values. For instance, coastal estuaries provide people with valuable recreational focuses, but it's also important for native fish that migrate between the sea and freshwater, birds and vegetation. EstuaryWatch data has been used to educate and inform better estuary management and has been incorporated into the decision support tool for artificial estuary openings in Victoria, and that's called the Estuary Entrance Management Support System, or EEMS for short. Water quality data, estuary observations and photos are collected by EstuaryWatch volunteers monthly, but the volunteers are the eyes and ears for the estuary too, and they are valuable observers of things like algal blooms, fish deaths and even storm surges. Now, photo point monitoring, one of the main activities, involves photographs taken from a fixed photo point, as I've already mentioned, and they're used to observe and document the environmental changes occurring on a waterway over time. For instance, major sand movements or channel changes, erosion. The monthly water quality tests include a depth profile of the estuary, meaning measurements are taken from the surface right through to the bottom of the waterway. And again, we're doing those vital parameters of dissolved oxygen, temperature, pH, salinity, turbidity. So these are important water quality parameters. They can reflect the seasonal flow changes, and they can have impacts from upstream, the upstream extent of seawater as it comes from the ocean up into the waterway. And of course, there's going to be upstream inputs from the catchment. The third one is the mouth condition monitoring, and that observes the presence or absence of flow from the river to the sea and the amount of sand that might be blocking that flow, and we call that the berm. Now, I've got an example of a photo point here. This place is St. George River, and it's an estuary that's seen from a lookout at Lorne on the Great Ocean Road. And this is photo point monitoring, showing the change in the estuary over time. The image also shows the mouth of the estuary. In this case, there's no sand barriers and the estuary mouth is open and the water is flowing out to sea. And incidentally, this art event by Breathe Ocean Blue was captured in just one of the regular photo point monitorings that an EstuaryWatch volunteer took. Well, it was just last year. Data is collected and loaded into the EstuaryWatch data portal, and it can be viewed spatially right across the state on maps. Clicking on a site within an estuary will take you to the site overview where there's photos and water quality data displayed. Like the WaterWatch portal, information from the EstuaryWatch portal, including graphs and statistics, can be downloaded. The EstuaryWatch program was established at the Corangamite CMA in 2006 in response to a groundswell of community interest and a lack of long-term data on the condition of Victorian's estuaries. So we've got 11 estuaries in the Corangamite region that are monitored on a monthly basis to collect data on the condition of the estuary. The monitoring undertaken by EstuaryWatch program follows standardised methodologies again. There are field manuals, and this ensures credible data of known standard. Estuary mouth condition monitoring is regularly conducted at the river mouth, or also called the estuary mouth, and 1 month the estuary might be closed to the sea, the next month it might be open. It's a very dynamic system. The program provides for important data for estuary management and also raises awareness of estuary health issues. So those are the two big water quality monitoring programs that we have. We also get involved in the River Detectives program. Now, it's an education initiative of the catchment management authorities, inspiring teachers and students to understand, appreciate and care for their local waterway through engaging cross-curricular citizen science activities. The program supports Victorian schools with online resources and a central source of education material suitable for primary and secondary schools. The program's free, and regional facilitators from CMAs, Catchment Management Authorities, provide the equipment and training for local school teachers. The students test water quality every month and upload their data to the website. It's an important class activity to encourage students to engage with nature. And that's something that we all want for our families. This is the website for River Detectives. So have a look at it yourself. Learn more from this website. Registered schools can fully utilise all those tabs at the top, but even the casual visitor can get some information from the resource riverbank, for instance. As you can see, registrations are open for 2021, so if you're a school teacher looking for something really interesting for your students, this is it. Now, I just want to show you this lovely photo. Have any of you been down to Apollo Bay and visited a place called Paradise? It's on the Barham River. Now here, a group is doing National Waterbug Blitz, and it's being delivered to a school group at this site in the Otways. National Waterbug Blitz is offered to citizen scientists to obtain long-term data, or even just a short-term snapshot of the catchment health, and participants can be beginners or experienced entomologists. This is one of the many casual or short-term citizen science opportunities being offered to environmental volunteers. Citizen scientists can investigate how healthy their local waterway and wetlands are simply by exploring and identifying what water bugs they contain. The type and number of water bugs found in a waterway can tell us a lot about how healthy that waterway is. During a National Waterbug Blitz, participants are instructed how to use nets and buckets to gather water bugs, and those creatures are placed into big white trays, as you can see in the image. The citizen scientists then sort and identify the creatures. They photograph them using the mobile phone app called National Waterbug Blitz, and that also assists in the identification. And the loading up of the image provides an important quality assurance step so that the photos can be checked for identification purposes. And the website gives fabulous information There's information on the equipment needed, some of the instructional videos, and it shares information about upcoming events. But the mapping page is the bit that I love. That's where users can see just how healthy or impacted their site is, using a combination of these new citizen science National Water Bug blitzes and existing data from the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, that have done many waterway water bug surveys in the past. So we get a map that is really telling us a story about, you know, what sites are really healthy and what sites are impacted. Platypus. The platypus is an iconic Australian species, and we're still uncovering information about its population. The Australian Platypus Conservancy, APC, has developed an app, and we call it the APMN for short. The app uses standard visual survey methods, and that really means that a person can go repeatedly to the same site, maybe on a weekly basis, and observe the water for platypus, and record on the app whether, you know, there's one, there's two, there's three, or there's none. That is an important thing because it gives us information about how platypus activity is tracking. You know, is it dawn and dusk that they're seeing? Is it, you know, spring versus in springtime, are we seeing many more of them? And that's usually the case. Another platypus app is the Platypus Spot, and it's used for recording the presence of platypus. The app is used to record actual sightings. It also allows us to add photos if they're available, and detailed text about the animal behaviour too. Did that run for you, this video? Can't tell. I had a lovely video of a platypus. Hopefully we get to see it. Okay. Another important citizen science activity is eDNA sampling. Now, it sounds like it ought to be done in a laboratory, doesn't it? But there's more and more opportunities to get involved as community volunteers in these type of events in Victoria. eDNA sampling enables the detection of species from environmental samples such as water through the analysis of DNA released by the organisms into the environment. So if you can imagine an animal shedding skin or shedding hair, that DNA can be analysed. Community members receive training in how to do sample collection, and they photograph the site and take note of habitat values. Now, for instance, platypus. In the Upper Barwon Landcare network near Birregurra and Winchelsea, there's been annual eDNA surveys for platypus over the last 3 years. And for example, fish, the Corangamite CMA have conducted an eDNA survey for Yarra pygmy perch, southern pygmy perch and river blackfish in the Curtis catchment near Timboon. Now, Yarra pygmy perch is a vulnerable fish species, and this survey has helped us understand the extent of the population and how we can protect through habitat protection restoration. Let's talk about frogs. This is a lovely image of a growling grass frog. Now, this program, Frog ID, is a citizen science program that works really well as an individual activity, especially on still days after rain. The calls that you can hear, the frog calls, are recorded on an app, the Frog ID app, and the recording is submitted with what you think the frog species is, the location and the date and time. The app provides you with the frog calls, and you can try and make a match. The recording also provides the necessary QA check. Now, I'd just like to cross-promote a upcoming talk that's going to be happening on Friday at 10 o'clock by James Fraser, who's going to be talking about frog census. So be sure to register through the Park Connect registration page. Now let's talk about iNaturalist, another citizen science app. This image is taken at Lake Victoria near Point Lonsdale, and the people here are doing a habitat survey. That's one of the activities from Waterwatch. Now, I've been using iNaturalist with an increasing number of citizen science activities at the Corangamite CMA, from Waterwatch habitat surveys, where people are able to identify the actual species of plants that are beside a waterway, to bioblitzes. For instance, the Great Southern Bioblitz was recently done this spring. And if you don't know a bioblitz, it's where as many different species are recorded as possible in a limited amount of time. This app, the iNaturalist app, is based on data collection, and then it sends the data to an aggregator, a data aggregator. And in this case, the data aggregator is the Atlas of Living Australia here in Australia. And that makes the data available to a wide variety of users, including researchers. A photograph or a number of photographs that show a species. For instance, the species flower, the leaf, the underside of the leaf, the form of the plant are logged, along with location, date and time. The actual programming of the app helps you identify the species, and if you can't identify it, others in the iNaturalist community will help, because there's experts out there, and they're familiar with those plants and animals. And this also provides the needed quality assurance check on the data. Here's an example of some of the outputs that are on iNaturalist. Now, I mentioned that there's an app, but there's also a website, so you can use either. It's to explore a little bit more, which is good fun. Just open up the website and click on any number of the tabs, and you'll start becoming familiar with the mapping portal aspect of it and see the observations that are present. Now, here is Lake Victoria at Point Lonsdale, and all these dots are observations made by citizen scientists. So it's really valuable data. Now, I've been using this tool a lot. The apps help me as a professional in natural resource management to discover more about the identification of plants and animals. And that's increased my knowledge. So it gets a big A+ from me, this one. Citizen science resources. So you're wondering, oh yeah, I'm getting inspired, I want to get started. Up until now, I've mentioned a lot of apps, and the CMA have developed some fact sheets for some of these apps to help people download the app and use it. So visit the Waterwatch Victoria website for these fact sheets. So there's one for eBird, useful for making bird lists at particular locations, really popular with bird watchers. iNaturalist, as you've already heard, I'm a big fan of that one. Frog ID, not no idea, Frog ID. It's really useful for frogs, and platypus spot, and the fluker, which refers to the photo point monitoring. Another important resource. Now, I'm really into water bugs surveys. I really like doing those, and this to complement those apps that we have been talking about. There's nothing like having a bit of a reference booklet, reference materials. So they're just as important for raising your awareness of things in the natural environment. So for example here, the Now and Then book provides information on aquatic macroinvertebrates and why these invertebrates are important. And it talks about them in larval and adult stages. Now this is available as an online resource on the Waterwatch Victoria website. Now that you've got the background on the wide variety of citizen science programs, how diverse they are, how accessible they are, I want to entice, and I've enticed you with some of these resources that you need to get going. I want to demonstrate to you how they can be used in a local, state or national park that you like to visit. Now, if you've been inspired, as I have in the past, let's look at what the Friends of Brisbane Rangers have been doing over the last few years in the area of citizen science. The Friends of Brisbane Rangers is an active group which began in 1982, providing opportunities for people to meet socially and learn about the environment, ecology, flora, fauna and history of the Brisbane Rangers National Park and the Stiglitz Historic Park in Victoria. And you can see it's right there between Geelong, Melbourne and Ballarat. The members do long-term water quality monitoring tests with WaterWatch, and they do water bug surveys. Now, the members enjoy discovering the animals present in the creek and the seasonal changes in Sutherland's Creek. Now, I'll point out that Sutherland's Creek at this point is in a gorge, and so that there's water there just about all the time, whereas the rest of the creek might be dried up. There'll always be water, and so it's a great refuge for animals in the park. The members also enjoy learning about the changes in water quality, and I've provided a graph there that's just been taken from the WaterWatch portal, showing what happens to dissolved oxygen and salinity levels over time. And when flows are reduced, say in summer, what happens to those parameters. So if we look perhaps at the area of January 2013, that's in the first third of that graph, you can see there's a bit of a dip in oxygen saturation, and the electrical conductivity, which is a representation of the salinity, has started to raise. And so that makes sense. Summertime, evaporation, reduced inflows, we're starting to get an impact on our water quality. Now, the Friends of Brisbane Rangers do love to do some observations of flora and fauna. It's an important park in that it's got a wide range, a really important biodiversity values. And so there's an image there of people doing a survey of terrestrial invertebrates, such as spiders, beetles, bugs, and also orchids. It's a very important place to go visiting for wildflowers in spring. So those sort of observations can be put onto iNaturalist. The group also is looking for 26 plants of significance that are important in this park. So to learn more about that sort of thing, go and visit their Facebook page. Now, next slide. Oh yes, the group also likes to do Climate Watch. Now that's a program I haven't mentioned up to date, but by regularly walking a Climate Watch trail and recording what you see, you can discover what's been happening in your local environment and contribute to a national program that helps scientists inform Australia's response to climate change. So walking the trail with the group gives you the opportunity to share the experience with others too. And there's a Climate Watch trail at Anarchy Gorge. And let's talk about fungi. There is a program called Fungi Map, where they record and map fungi in Australia. And it's all about spreading the word about the essential role fungi have in biodiversity. And the group advocates for fungal conservation and investment in mycology. And they'd love to get more participants to help with this work. The range of fungi observed is added to iNaturalist. As I mentioned before, this is a great way of increasing personal knowledge of species that might interest you. Now, others also think iNaturalist is pretty good. This week there's a bio blitz on as part of the Volunteering in Nature summer series. You can register on the website and start capturing your observations in your favourite park, like one of the state or national parks, or even on some DELP land. So when I say DELP, I mean public land, crowned land. Think of it as open space where there is natural values, not necessarily your garden or the local rose garden. But bio blitzes are a great way of getting a snapshot of what's happening in our environment, and it's great fun too. You learn something from it. And now that we're coming to the end of the presentation, so I want to reiterate that I want to say thank you to our current environmental volunteers this International Volunteer Day, especially the Waterwatch and EstuaryWatch volunteers at the Corangamite CMA. But if I wanted to spruik it a little bit further than that, if you wish to become a citizen scientist, this is a great place to start. For further information regarding waterway citizen science from catchment to coast, including monitoring methods, data collection and assessment, these can be obtained from the Waterwatch and the EstuaryWatch websites. It's a great source of information. And if you want to learn a bit more about CMAs, there's the information on the Corangamite CMA. And I think that might be it. That's it. Back to you, Sasha.
Thanks, Deirdre. Thanks so much. This is an opportunity for questions to come through. So if anyone has any questions, then throw them our way. And whilst they're coming through, I had a few little questions along the way. One that I did want to ask that I think is important because you've dedicated your time here, but I just wanted to know what's the best part of your job, what you love about your job, Deirdre?
Well, I'm really fortunate. I'm so fortunate in my job that I get to meet people who are so engaged with nature and the environment and are willing to give of themselves to improve the scientific knowledge around our environment. So that's got to be a number one thing in my job. The second number one thing, not the number one, the number two thing is being able to get out into the environment and to visit the special places around the catchment. You know, I don't mean just the wonderful coastlines or catchments, but even the urban waterways. They're all great to go and visit and meet people there and instruct them in how to use the programs and how to get trained up in doing water quality monitoring. So yeah, number one, number two, people and place.
That's great, thank you, thanks so much. And you mentioned a few links in there about how the best way to get involved. Is there any other ways that people can get involved or find ways to connect? Any events that are coming up over the next kind of few weeks that you'd like to let us know about?
Oh, look, I'm afraid just waiting for COVID to sort of settle down. Now that has really put a spanner in our works with trying to get face-to-face engagement. So as far as training and getting these programs back and running, they've sort of been put on hold just for the time being. But we all know that Victorians have done a wonderful job in managing the virus, and we're expecting to be back to volunteering very soon. I think the best way to find out about upcoming activities would be to visit the Waterwatch Victoria website, because there's a calendar there, and as things become more available, they'll be loaded up on that calendar. There's a state newsletter that goes from the Waterwatch Victoria and EstuaryWatch Victoria websites, as well as the CMAs themselves. Each CMA will be interested in engagement with the community, and so they'll have lots of newsletters to access, and you know, there'll be activities there, I think. Another alternative is the Australian Citizen Science Association. That's a national program, and that provides lots of opportunities for citizen science beyond just waterways. You know, might be looking at dung beetles or stars in the sky. You know, like there's a whole range of different citizen science opportunities.
So for all the dung beetle fans and those who love stargazing, Australian Citizen Science Association, otherwise all things watery, come to us. We've just got a question on the chat box. So from Debbie, thank you for your wonderful presentation. You spoke about the richness of citizen science in catchments. I would like to know, what do you think is still missing? It's a great question.
Well,
there's another little part to the question if you like. I'd like to know what you think is still missing and what would make programs better, more connected or more engaging.
Oh, gee, that's so tricky. Okay, what's missing? I think probably what we're learning as we're going along as citizen science project officers is just how things are diversifying. What we're involved with 10 years ago is so narrow compared to what's available now. So it's hard for me to say what's missing because it's expanding. It's expanding all the time. I think probably keeping all parts of the community engaged, it might be that missing links, because sometimes our pool of volunteers are those that have time, but we still want to be involved with the people that don't have time, you know, like making sure that we have opportunities that are appropriate to people's availability. And so I suppose that's something that I think we could really develop. Sasha, as you know, may or may not know, has been involved with a lot of citizen science too. So what do you reckon, Sasha?
I think you summed it all up. You took all the words out of my mouth. And I think, you know, you talked about it earlier about the survey for citizen scientists and that there's a real desire for people to work more with Aboriginal and groups, Aboriginal people and traditional owners. So I think that's definitely something that we could do better in that space, and are really interested in working with more diverse groups, but also creating more diverse opportunities. Like you said, people who are really busy but might not have as much time as others, or people with young families or recreational users. So I think just thinking about different ways that we can really provide diverse opportunities, exciting opportunities that are a bit further and a bit more progressed than some of the other work that we've done in the past. So it's keeping us all busy, just scratching our heads and making plans for more programs. So thanks, Dee. There's another comment in here, not a question, but I would just like to say I found this presentation really informative, and I love that Corangamite region is in such good hands. That's so lovely. Thank you. That's a really nice thing to say. So, you know, because of the good work of Deirdre and her colleagues and these amazing volunteers that are out there, I agree that, you know, that our environment is in good hands.
I'd just like to add to that, if I could, the network that's available, of the network of volunteers and the network within the natural resource management sector is really important in this too. We say that it's in good hands because of the people, but it's because of the work that's been done before us. The Victorian government wants to look after our waterways, but it also wants to look after the communities as well. So if we can make sure that people are networked together, that they're engaged and interacting with one another and sharing their knowledge, that's super important too.
Thanks, Deirdre. There were a few other, while I'm waiting for a few more questions to come down the line, there are a few different with the platypus video for the Barwon River. Unfortunately, that didn't work, but if you want to check it out, there is an Instagram page, so CCMA_citizen_science, and Deirdre is behind the scenes on that account, and post some really interesting stuff from in the field, including platypus at Barwon River. There was also, I can put that in the link if you like, but also Breathe Blue Ocean was the name of the other Instagram account as well, from St George's River. So if anyone's on Instagram, go check out Breathe Blue Ocean and CCMA Citizen Science, and of course Waterwatch Victoria. If you want to check us out, we're on Instagram, and EstuaryWatch Victoria is on Facebook. So we're a little bit social. Any other links? Oh, there's also some other links that have been popped in there as well. So I think that kind of, so we're running out of questions. We might wrap it up, but just really wanted to thank you, Deirdre, for your time today and for your presentation. Really appreciate it. I wanted to thank everyone for giving their time, providing some great questions and keeping us on our toes. Really appreciate that as well. This presentation, as we mentioned earlier, is going to be uploaded onto the Parks Victoria Volunteering in Nature website. So look out for that, and really just have a great day. Get involved in some of the events that are happening online, as we mentioned, later in the week, during the week, and have an amazing International Volunteer Day. Whatever you decide to do on Saturday, celebrate, get out in nature, get out there. As always, stay tuned for volunteer opportunities on the Parks Victoria volunteer portal, Park Connect, and the website as well. Oh, no more questions? No. We're probably going to wrap. So thank you once again, everyone. Take care, and we'll see you out there in the waterways.